Hey everyone, welcome to Slow News Day Live. My name is Steve Poikinen. I'm here in the Santa Cruz Mountains, but only for a couple more weeks. And holy crap, am I overjoyed about that. Um, we do not have our better than your co-host with us this afternoon, and that's all right. We're gonna get fucking just right down to I don't know, some swinging man meat and dude conversation. We're just I Jason Burmis, good friend and broadcaster extraordinaire, is with us on the program today. It's good to see you, my friend. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Very happy to be here. I always enjoy coming on this show and just kind of talking about all the daily, weekly, monthly madness and intertwining into the historical history of madness that we are continually living. And I got to chop it up with the Convo Couch yesterday, do an hour plus, the majority of which was on DARPA, secret military projects, the Newsweek article about that secret military operating in the United States for now over a decade, unaccounted for by any member of government or Congress. It's, good stuff. And then I had Whitney Webb on very early in the morning to go over her latest Epstein Gates article that obviously has a lot more larger context in the sense of big tech and their connections to this guy, connections to intelligence, and really connections to the WHO, the United Nations, UNESCO, all these different organizations that are pushing a transhumanist movement.
And I caught a good chunk of that, the interview with Whitney this morning, because we had her on this past Sunday. Thought we were only gonna have her for like an hour, maybe. She wound up being able to stay for like an hour and a half. It was in that like 80-85 minutes, there was probably more condensed information. And I mean, Whitney's been on approaching 20 times now. Um, if there is such a thing as a regular on our show, she's one of them. And it was probably the most informative episode that we've ever done with her, Jason. It was wild. Um, so when I saw that she was on with you and I saw that she was on with Ryan, I'm like, well, I have to watch in case we miss something, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I was pretty stoked that like there were conversations and lanes of discussion that we hadn't gone on, but like the overall bulk core of the information, um, mostly the same. And it is so fucking necessary, my friend, for this information to get out. Like I feel as strongly about this and approaching this transhumanist agenda and this new normal that we're in. It's not as important as 9/11. It's the same thing.
Thank you. It's an extension of that national security state that was super empowered during 9/11 and then was able to utilize their nice little DARPA tools in their war on terror overseas and then slowly build an infrastructure here where they use those same tools against we, the people of the United States, and then mask us in this idea that we are terrorists, this propaganda through their Trojan horse systems, their Facebooks, their Twitters, their Googles, and their unaccountable big tech. We were talking about this before the break, but these now controllers of narratives that only want one answer all the time are continually disproven. It's not like it's tough. It's not like it's hard to see. It's pretty relevant to the point that now we're able to talk about a leak out of Wuhan when all that information was available publicly a year plus ago. They censored things like Plandemic that had that as part of the narrative, whether you believed it or not. And I remember, because we discussed it, we lived in a time, when 9/11 or post 9/11 where something like Loose Change could really, really go mega viral, right? Because they didn't take it off the internet. It was being put up all over the place. Months would pass by and people would still pass it around. Well, Plandemic was basically cut off from the internet within 3 or 4 days in just about every avenue. There were very little places that you could find it, BitChute being one of them. And anywhere where you could find it, eventually these arbiters of truth at big tech would basically block their websites by when you shared them on their platforms, you would get a notice that this is an unsafe site. Now, wasn't going to hack your computer, wasn't even going to surveil you and then sell your information in the same manner that Facebook or Twitter or these big tech companies would, but somehow they're the harmful ones that are allowing you to explore other narratives that now can be openly talked about 15, 16 months later after a lot of these criminals have been given impunity to unleash just the most authoritarian, dictatorial, Orwellian measures and hurt people, Steve. And hurt people.
And I mean, you know, we've known each other now long enough to where, like, it's not a surprise if I say that I have a lot, you know, the decent amount of friends that are on the left or consider themselves on the left. And the thing that I always say is, look, if you're okay, or if you're not okay, if you're not okay with qualified immunity for the police, why are you okay with it for vaccine manufacturers? Why are you okay with it for these giant pharmaceutical corporations who you know are criminal, who you know have been caught time and time and time again putting people's lives at risk for profit? Why are you okay with them having this qualified immunity? And every single time, it's like there's nothing there, and now all of a sudden I'm a secret right-winger.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, because that was my other video today. You know, I came across just the other night while I was watching some late night television. I like to binge watch, you know, South Park or Storage Wars or some bullshit on the History Channel. I like American Pickers.
See you being a Storage Wars guy.
Oh, I'm a big Storage Wars guy. Are you kidding me? I just came from the Goodwill and got some deals, Steve. Some deals, kid. Let me tell you. Very, very, very excited about that. I'm a big thrift shopper. That's how I have a lot of my gear. In fact, you know, I went to Salvation Army yesterday. And I picked up 3 monitors with HDMI inputs for the grand total of $35. That's how Jason Burmis makes it happen, folks. He thrift shops, and I'm telling you, I'm looking at these buildings. I can't wait to finally have an office and expand this thing. I keep talking about it, but I promise you, it is going to happen. So anyway, I'm watching, and I see a commercial for Ingrezza, and I was completely unaware of Ingrezza. Do you know what this drug is, Steve?
No, I do not.
I mean, I feel like we should play it for your audience, Steve, because
let's do that.
It's kind of insane that, you know, I was completely unaware of it. Are you aware of a drug called Abilify?
I have heard of Abilify.
All right, so
you've been taking mental health meds, and your
1 minute. Let's just bring this on over here. And well, Abilify, for those that don't know, was a drug for people that were on antidepressants, right, Steve?
Yeah.
That needed another antidepressant because their antidepressants weren't working.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it turns out, Steve, and I played this video yesterday. It was almost comical because the actress in this one looks like the actress from the Abilify commercial 10 plus years ago, aged 10 years. And it just so happens that one of the side effects that they warned you about with Abilify was going to be involuntary motions and spasms. Well, instead of taking antidepressants off the market because they give you a palsy-like syndrome called TD in your face and arms, this is the solution. Are you ready?
You've been taking mental health meds, and your mind is finally in a better place. Except now, you have uncontrollable body movements called tardive dyskinesia, TD. And it can seem like that's all people see.
So I just want to reiterate this. Instead of taking these drugs off the market because they're causing your face and arms to have motion, which obviously cannot be good for your mental health, no matter what they're telling you you're mentally in a better place, and don't worry, they have the solution. It gets really cartoon level at the end, but let's just keep going.
Some meds for mental health can cause abnormal dopamine signaling in the brain. While how it works is not fully understood, Ingrezza is thought to reduce that signaling.
Not proven to reduce it, but thought to reduce the signaling we don't fully understand. Let me continue.
Ingrezza is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with TD movements in the face and body. People taking Ingrezza can stay on their current dose of most mental health meds. Don't take Ingrezza if you're allergic to any of its ingredients. Ingrezza may cause serious side effects, including sleepiness. Don't drive, operate heavy machinery, or do other dangerous activities until you know how Ingrezza affects you.
And here it
Other
comes.
serious side effects include
Hold on, here it comes. Ready for the next side effect? It includes this, Steve.
potential heart rhythm problems and abnormal movements.
So it causes abnormal movements when it's supposed to be stopping abnormal movements. Okay? And when I saw this, my heart was breaking. I didn't think it could get more crazy than Abilify. But this is obviously more crazy, and that's how far we've gone, to the point where we're not only advertising them to people, we're letting you know that your antidepressants can cause palsy-like symptoms in your face and body. And instead of, taking them off the market because they're so damn profitable and they love doping us up, they're going to give you another drug that they say should regulate these dopamine transmissions that we don't understand. Oh, by the way, one of the side effects might be more abnormal movements. It's just like, I almost want to play the Abilify commercial because Abilify is something I covered it in InfoWars. Okay? And when you see this, you tell me this doesn't look like... Oh, no, that's not the one I want. Abilify. We don't want this one. Here we go. This one here. So... this woman, tell me this woman doesn't look like that woman 10 years ago. And you listen to this, and remember the side effects on this antidepressant on top of more antidepressants, they're going to tell you are suicidal thoughts and actions. But go ahead.
I'm taking an antidepressant, but it feels like I need some more help.
Approximately 2 out of 3 people being treated for depression still have unresolved symptoms.
So let's just go to that. Let's break that one down.
And she does.
2 out of 3 at this time that were on meds. So they're telling you here 66+%, it's not working. So instead of getting you off those drugs, they want you on a drug like this one. And look at her. Watch it. Watch this.
Symptoms. If your antidepressant alone isn't enough, talk to your doctor. One option he may consider is adding Abilify. Abilify is approved to treat depression in adults when added to an antidepressant. Learn more about Abilify. Call your doctor if your depression worsens or you have unusual changes in mood, behavior, or thoughts of suicide.
So it could worsen. Your behavior or mood could change, and all of a sudden you have new thoughts of suicide. But let's continue.
That's all those drugs, too. They all have suicide risk.
Yeah, and the next thing is they're going to tell you about the involuntary movements.
These in children, teens, and young adults. Elderly dementia patients taking Abilify have an increased risk of death or stroke. Call your doctor if you have high fever, stiff muscles, and confusion on Abilify, as these may be signs of a life-threatening reaction. Or uncontrollable muscle movements.
Uncontrollable muscle movements.
These could become permanent.
And it could become permanent. They warned you. But don't worry, it's not so permanent if you're on the meds if we give you now this new drug called Ingrezza. So, Steve, we're gone, dude. Like, there's just so many people. It's not like do some sit-ups, get out there, set some goals. They
want you to take 3 drugs for depression at once. Like, what the fuck?
And have face spasms and muscle spasms. Because, that's great for my mental health. When I'm constantly worried whether my mouth is going to go on the other side of my face while I talk or not talk, that's good for my mental health.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. When you're having uncontrollable hand tics while you're at work, where most people do work like either with their hands at a desk, some shit. No, that's not going to get you through the day. It's not. Costello, thank you, just sent in a Super Ray and said he takes 3 drugs to control the side effects of his blood pressure medication.
Oh my God.
Like, that's severe. And all those drugs that they mentioned on that Abilify commercial is Effexor, Paxil, something else. But the one that wasn't on there was Wellbutrin, because they had to yank that from the market because it was turning people legitimately crazy, like murderous and or suicide, but like to the point to where they weren't just harmful to themselves, they were harmful to other people.
Well, I pointed out in my video today that what they don't tell you about a lot of these people that are taking these serotonin reuptake inhibitors is that, yeah, they tell you about the suicidal thoughts and actions, and they talk about the behavioral changes, but a lot of these people get so disassociated with reality in these burst moments, they kill their family first. You know, a lot of these things, they never talk about it, but you're like, my God, he killed his 3 kids and his wife? He killed his, 2 kids and his girlfriend? What happened? They never talk about the meds they're on. Ever, ever, ever. In fact, that last mass shooter that was in the streets after being at a bar, he ended up killing his sister. He was all medded up. I can't remember what his name is, but, who cares? I remember doing stories on it 4 years ago. He was on all sorts of antidepressants for years. And they never, ever, ever associate that with mass shootings. All they associate, or these things, is guns. Guns bad. And it's funny, I should bring this up too. We were talking big tech censorship. One of the things I highlighted, especially because we're going to get into DARPA, about the big tech censorship is that I no longer have any strikes on YouTube. I got rid of my strikes, right? But they took down a video that Whitney Webb and I did from 7+ months ago on Operation Warp Speed and DARPA and gave me a medical misinformation takedown, but didn't give me a strike for it. So I gotta wonder, obviously it's always been selective enforcement. Obviously it's an arbitrary rule set, but is that even like a sly admission that we're just taking this down because we don't like it, a la the Project Veritas leaks that we now have and the 2 whistleblowers that are saying that's exactly what's happening. We have algorithms against anything, factual or non-factual, that will cause vaccine hesitancy. And if an hour plus with Jason Burmis and Whitney Webb on DARPA and Operation Warp Speed don't cause vaccine hesitancy, well, Steve, quite frankly, I'm not doing my job.
I actually really want to talk about like all of the shit that's coming our way for the vaccine hesitancy thing, and YouTube making that decision that as of 3-4 days from now, any channel that's not deemed commercially viable once again is up for the axe. I do want to kind of make a point here real quick though, in terms of these mood stabilizing drugs. What they're artificially trying to replace or activate serotonin, right? And oxytocin is one of the things that they go for. But we as individuals in 2021, we have been trained to become dopamine addicts, right? So here's the thing. I'm going to pull up just so you guys can see the difference in how it works. Where the shit did it go? I think it's this one. So these are the chemicals in your brain. This is what these drugs are trying to do. But what the majority of human beings, period, writ large, on the planet have become are dopamine addicts. Dopamine's the brain signal that a reward is at hand. The great feeling motivates the body to invest effort in pursuit of that reward. Neurons connect when the dopamine flows, which wires you to turn on the good feeling again in similar settings. Steps that meet needs feel good because of dopamine. But this is your entire online existence, and the other 3 chemicals here, serotonin, oxytocin, and endorphins, those all take place when you're in human contact with people, when you touch another human being, when you develop a relationship built on trust and mutual respect. And these are things that need to happen, Jason, in the real world. And for the last 18 months, we've all been more or less locked down, and we've been told, don't touch people, don't go outside, don't come into contact with anyone else. And now everyone is hardwired to respond to and to seek out dopamine, which happens artificially.
Well, let's talk about that right now, because we do kind of live in this society where it's instant gratification and you don't have to work for it, and you're not supposed to feel pain or be frustrated, and you can change everything, not only from your sex or gender to a boy or a girl, but hell, you could be non-binary and you could identify as anything you want. And we talk about these dopamine releases. And we talk about these human brain interfaces. What people need to be aware of is that is the goal, and many of these people that already have the human brain interfaces there are soldiers that had PTSD. And if I just type in patent granted human brain interface will be your therapist, here is Yahoo News. MindCure files provisional patent application for AI digital therapeutics platforms. Okay? So they want to put these things in your brain, and they want those to regulate your serotonin levels, your dopamine levels. This is extremely dangerous.
What they're doing is presenting MK Ultra as a public project with AI, because in that article, it talks about introducing the use of psychedelics into that therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And that is at the core of the MK Ultra fucking brainwashing program. So I would be incredibly hesitant with anything like that. There are people like MAPS here in Santa Cruz, the Multidisciplinary Academy for the Advancement of Psychedelic Studies, that aren't doing this in a sort of, nefarious capacity. In fact, they don't have government funding. They don't have funding from a lot of these giant universities. They had to go out and publicly fund the vast majority of their projects and research. And they are trying to incorporate like low dose MDMA into PTSD therapy. They were doing the same thing with psilocybin. They had fantastic results. And this is where this whole push is coming from, because Silicon Valley found out about a decade ago that microdosing boosts production. So they started openly advocating their employees to take small amounts of psychedelics and shit like that while at work on the clock, because if your employee goes out and spends their money, Jason, on a bag of mushrooms, and then, crumbles it up or whatever, it does little micro on their dime and raises their production for you, you just made a wonderful investment that doesn't cost you as the employer a fucking penny.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that it's good to note that there are very positive benefits to some of these psychedelics. I think we get into dangerous places when we put people who are beholden to big pharma, as we just watched those commercials, in charge of that, and especially intertwine these interfaces that are going to be surgically implanted in our bodies and in our brains, because you can't trust these people,
aren't they? Just really fucking cute. Really cute.
They're cute, all right. And believe me, I'm no angel. I've definitely taken a mushroom or two in my day. And like you said,
they're legal here.
What's that?
They're legal here.
Are they legal in California now?
Decriminalized. Well, fully decriminalized for cultivation and possession.
Interesting. I was not aware of that, Steve.
All plant-based psychedelics.
Interesting. Wow. So you can do peyote and everything out there?
Yeah, you could theoretically grow it if you could replicate the conditions.
Yeah. What about DMT would also be almost impossible, but I guess that if you had a hydroponic garden, anything is possible, right?
You can. It takes the whole room, and it takes about 5 years, but you can regrow mimosa indoors, and you can get it, developed and thriving to the point to where you can then manufacture DMT off the mimosa.
Wow. Wow, that is interesting. I'm sure that they are looking at that as well. Again, I was talking to my sister about this earlier. People have to understand, in other countries, they do not allow big pharma to even have commercials, not even magazine ads. That's something that's supposed to be between you and your doctor. There should not be a profit incentive on any type of medication to a medical professional or otherwise. And I think that, again, we illustrated how dangerous these things are. and how dangerous they could become, especially if they become the norm implanted in our bodies. And Steve, although we've talked about the human-brain interfaces, one of the things that we haven't talked about is nanotechnology, which is, this latest quote-unquote vaccine. It's biological nanotechnology, but that is just a very small step away from what they're openly discussing via DARPA and DARPA-like programs, where we are talking about actual nanobots in your body, regulating your biological systems. That is one of the most dangerous and nightmarish things I could imagine happening to the human populace, because, Steve, by very definition, we would no longer be the human populace. We would be cyborgs, whether we like it or not. And when we're talking about nanotechnology, we are talking about things that we cannot see or perceive with our human senses, whether it be sight, touch, or smell at all, and, again, can be overseen by a very real predator class and their infrastructure.
I'm gonna reference here a report that we've. Oh shit, that's my camera, not the share screen button.
Hey,
you're doing great. That we've gone over pretty extensively on the show. The Center for Health Security. Jump down to. Can I jump? No, I can't jump. That's right. Well, there's a whole giant ass section about the handheld technology that we can use, Jason, for self-diagnosis.
Oh,
yeah. So they have a handheld mass spectrometer that we're going to be able to use. Here it is. The first mass spectrometer diagnostic test in 2013 for bacterial and fungal infections. You're going to be able to pull your own blood, right? And then in the palm of your hand, you're going to be able to hook it up to a mass spectrometer that will diagnose what's wrong with you. And then you can go ahead and get on your computer. You can type in what's wrong with you, and a drone will deliver you a nano patch or a patch that will then administer the vaccine.
Oh, I can't
or whatever
wait.
The medicine is. Like you as the doctors are gone, Jason. Doctors are gone because the medical field is going to be ran entirely through telehealth by advanced machine learning.
Yeah. And again, that's why I keep bringing up this document again and again and again, Steve. And I want to just show people that on paper, NASA, Dennis Bushnell, who's still the chief scientist back in 2001, was touring the country, maybe even the world, with this very real PowerPoint presentation that obviously had more slides to it than just this. But they said the bio-nano era would begin in 2020. This is a future warfare 2025 document. And when you talk about tele-everything, and by the way, the next era being virtual, telepolitics, telesocialization, telemedicine, teleeducation, all of it. Notice the teletravel. That's towards the end of it. That's when they got the nice little brain chip in you, and you can get hooked up, and VR is that much more real. And they're selling you, again, now on this transgender movement where it's not just about sex, but you can be a six-headed elephant fighting Vishnu, the six-armed elephant.
Can I be fully vaccinated, Jason?
Can
I identify as a fully vaccinated American?
Probably not even in the virtual world, Steve, unfortunately. They probably won't even allow that in the virtual world. They'll probably, want to dominate the AI consciousness psyche that they've created in their little virtual world as much as they did here, just out of total ego and evil. Not that it matters. That's what I suspect. So I'm going to say hard no on that, Steve.
I want you to run that by Militech when you see him.
Oh, yeah?
I do. Run that by Militech, see what he thinks. and I bet you he agrees with me. It's good to at least try.
Militich is on, whatchamacallit. He's on the road. I almost went with him. He's going to be calling fights in Des Moines. for XFC, I think tomorrow night. So, Militich, a good guy, man, and just the people in general here in Iowa have been just such a relief. I guess
let's talk about Iowa for a minute, man, because you got a little bit to brag. It's not like it's your state, but it's your state. So, I mean, in terms of like individual efforts to make what is happening, I don't know, to like keep it from just rolling over on us as fast as it is currently here in California, for example. Iowa's been doing a lot of really good things, and I don't know if everybody knows about it. So just kind of like
it doesn't make the
some
media
highlights.
I wasn't even going to come here, Steve. This wasn't even on my trip list last year, right?
Yeah.
Wisconsin was instead, because there really wasn't much media coverage on what was going on in Iowa, and quite frankly, you can kind of tell why. Number one, especially where I live in Iowa, it's on the border of Illinois. And there's just such a stark difference that you wouldn't want national media coverage of how much Iowa is doing things different than Illinois, especially because, again, most people don't know what the Quad Cities is, but it's actually a pretty sizable area, about 500,000 people between the two sides on the state. And then, you had Kim Reynolds kind of right out of the gates not mandate masks until this November. And even then, that was kind of sketchy and had a huge pushback after the fact. You could still not wear a mask if you were only there for 15 minutes. So even on that, she gave you this loophole. Businesses never shut down here. And, when I first moved here, the kids were supposed to be full-time in school. There were no masks. Now, the school boards fought very hard to close down schools. And then once they did open, mask up the kids. And obviously, this was something that me and the local community and other local communities throughout Iowa began fighting. And it was just 2 Sundays ago, Steve, that I was at one of these meetings. There's about 75 people there. It was a Make America Free Again event. Pam Popper virtually spoke to these people. Our local sheriff showed up, Tim Lane, who said he basically in all of Scott County would not enforce any mask mandate, private or otherwise, which again is another one of those big wins. You got to know who your sheriff is. That's how you can make a difference. And these 2 women from Ankeny began to speak about their experience with their children. And Ankeny is kind of a suburb of Des Moines, which is the capital here in Iowa. Well, it just so happens that earlier in the week, about 200 people did show up at the Capitol and show their force and say, this is ridiculous. We want this gone. These women went to their school board. They were humiliated again. They were discriminated against. I had them on Monday night afterwards. They were very, very upset. One of them felt that they were followed, after the fact, and they were almost in tears, Following that Monday night, the people that I get together, they went and saw their school board and faced them. Are you seeing a pattern here, folks? And believe me, they try to intimidate the school boards here. Tried to intimidate the parents with the mask mandates and all that. Show up with 25, 30 people. Just take the chairs away from their 6 feet distance and take your mask off. Again, sheriff's on our side. So once that happens, their power is almost completely gone, but they still have a prepared answer for everything. And it's funny. So Militich was there on I believe, Tuesday night, that night after. And they had a prepared speech, and as soon as the superintendent, after just basically ignoring everybody that had spoke, broke out the prepared speech and started it, Militich spoke up and was told to, sit down and shut up. And he said, I'm not going to sit down and shut up. You guys are a bunch of little Eichmanns. And he called them little Eichmanns to their face. They still, that Tuesday, my friend, felt that they had won with their little, hunger for power. And then I don't know whether this is the grace of God, because I'm kind of an agnostic, but I believe in good and evil, and I believe that you fight hard enough, you can make a difference. Start getting a text from the mothers, and they go, Congress is going to sign them banning the masks on the kids, and the Senate's going to sign it, and the governor's going to sign it too. And I'm like, really? And I'm on my way to one of these meetings. So literally, I get this text. It's about 5 p.m. here. I get to the meeting at 6. I start telling everybody about this. They're like, no way, blah, blah, blah. This can't be happening. That's great. And then by the end of the night, not only is it national news, barely, because you didn't want to see it on national news other than to demonize her the next day. But, there were a few stories. Not only did our governor sign that and ban masks on children in the entire state. So what those women did and what my neighbors and my friends did affected the whole state. I want to reiterate that. The women that I spoke with a week and a half prior are sitting next to the governor as she bans it. And when I was able to tell the kids that night that that was going to happen, and then got pictures of them together, and then the next day they got to go to school and not wear those masks, huge. Just a huge feeling, man. It's listen, and it's not like it's great we had to go through this, and it's not okay what they did, but it is a shining example how if you gather with others and you force them to look at you in the eyeball, and even if they want to ignore you, it's that show of force and that show of unhappiness that eventually things get done. Notice people like Cuomo and Newsom have completely isolated themselves from any situation where that might happen, Steve.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing, and this is when, like, whenever I'm hanging out with my friends that are more like authoritarian style conservative, when they bitch about protests, I'm like, but, there's been clear examples of, and this is what Malcolm X said a lot, you don't need violence. You just need people to believe that there might be violence.
Well,
and if you show up in force, there to make a point and not to create bodies,
yeah,
that's a real victory and a real show of force. Everybody loses once the violence starts.
That's right. That's right.
Everybody loses.
That's right. And
when you make people have to think about it and have to think about whether or not it's really worth it to go ahead and catch an ass whooping for it, when they know, especially with the masks and shit, dude, they know it's wrong. They know it's wrong. They know it's just, there's something inherently fucking evil about it. They know it, dude. And the ones that are just broken individuals and get off on it, there's way less of them than there are of us. I do believe that.
I want to believe it, and I think that you're right in the sense that they have to think about it. And one of the things that I've advocated for is that we have to stop this telepolitics thing, because we still have certain members on the Scott County board, not the school board, that are having these virtual meetings, and you can't show this force. And I would suggest to those that aren't able to do that to go to a board meeting with other people. Go to these people's homes and protest outside of their home and live stream it and shame them there. And, I get it. You can't do that day after day after day. You might have to pick one person or one day and find, 10 people to be here and 10 people to be there, and then it's over. Well, then you pick one that is especially egregious. That is the hypocrite among hypocrites, the person that is the most authoritarian, the most power craving, and the person that's not following the rules, and you pool your money together and you get a private investigator. And you put that private investigator on them for a week, and I guarantee you the amount of hypocrisy that you are going to be able to show and other goodies that you couldn't even imagine that will come across would be huge. It will be well worth the $1,000 or $2,000 investment for this person to be followed for a little while. It will be well worth that. And that's what we need to do, because, when I was at the meeting, some people was like, well, you want to dox these people? Take a page from the left. I go, no, I'm not here to dox them at all. I'm not going to put their address online or anything like that. But I want to let them know that just because they don't want to show up to the place that they were actually put in a position to be held accountable doesn't mean they won't be held accountable, and show them that we can come here. And I go, and if that doesn't work, these people, again, are such hypocrites, it will not take much to put them on blast and end their precious political careers. Period. And I know there's always another scumbag waiting to come in and slip in there, but hopefully enough good people have figured out that they now have to take charge of their local governments. Otherwise, these authoritarian dictates that have no basis in science could happen to us at any moment, Steve.
Well, I'm gonna throw everyone for a curveball here. Thanks, Sleepy. Sleepy just threw this tweet in the element. And if you'll recall, guys, Ron DeSantis banned the vaccine passports. So this concert promoter ran with differential pricing, $20 for your papers, $1,000 for unvaccinated attendees. Does it open it in a different? No, we're still on this one. No, we're not. Okay, so I'm going to go to that article here.
I think it's a video thing. It's from a local-ish news place, I think.
Well, you know what? Let me say this, Steve. That is why DeSantis didn't go far enough, and I would say thank you again to our governor that banned that practice by private businesses. In other words, the only way that you could enforce such a thing is to ask somebody for their app, their vaccine passport, or their physical documentation, right? Well, you're not allowed to do that in Iowa. There are some exceptions for healthcare and hospitals, which I do not like. But no business here could hold an event like that and do that here. And DeSantis gave them way too many loopholes. I saw that happening when they had that UFC event there and they used the COVID pass.
Mm-hmm. Let's take a listen here real quick. See what they got.
Concerts are starting to come back here to Florida, but I-Team investigator Adam Walzer uncovers whether you have a COVID-19 vaccination or not will determine how much you will have to pay to attend an upcoming local show.
These are all my tickets from over the years.
Brittany Wiggin loves going to concerts. These are photos from punk rock shows she has attended since she was a teenager. Displays on her living room wall hold ticket stubs, wristbands, and guitar picks from her favorite bands. The COVID-19 pandemic put all concerts on hold, but Wiggin recently saw an announcement for a show to be held at the St. Petersburg VFW Post 39 next month. Headlined by Teenage Bottle Rocket, Make War, and Rudderkin.
I saw the announcement for the concert, and then when you go to purchase the tickets, it says that you have to show proof of vaccination, which I do not have.
Tickets cost $18 in advance or $20 at the door if you have a vaccination certificate.
If I wanted to go to the concert without a vaccination, I would have to pay $999.99.
Promoter Paul Williams came up with the idea.
We're just trying to do a show safely, and they should go out and get vaccinated.
Fuck you!
Pause it for a second, Steve.
Their family and their
Pause it. Safe unless you're rich. Safe unless you're rich. Safe unless I'm going to profit a little bit more, because I know it's not about your safety. Okay? It's about coercion. Because if it was about safety, there would be no price you could pay. Again, this is wrong on so many levels, my friend.
Oh, I agree.
Communities.
Teenage Bottle Rocket was at first skeptical of the approach, but the band now fully supports the
I
idea.
bet they do.
We're all vaccinated. We encourage everyone else to get vaccinated.
Okay, I'm gonna pause it for a second because you guys probably already know where I'm gonna fucking head with this, but I grew up when punk rock meant you didn't follow orders. you chose to disobey the establishment, or at least you got informed consent before you made a decision. Mm-hmm. It was about reclaiming your individual power and then working with people to destroy that system, because that system is oppressive, murderous, genocidal even, and authoritarian as fuck. And to have these fucking punk guys, I don't know who Teenage Bottle Rockets is. I don't. But to have that fuck be like, of course we're vaccinated. Fucking, we're punk as fuck, dude. Jello Biafra sat in his fucking house with a mask on, telling me to vote for Joe Biden and get a fucking vaccine in my dick. Like, fuck Jello Biafra, dude. But it's not just him. He's just, I mean, my God, I had a special connection with Dead Kennedys when I was, it was one of the first fucking punk shows I ever saw. Like, that, they went hard. They did.
Yeah.
And shit, dude, to see this just kills me, man.
It does just kill me. I'm lucky to be here in Iowa. Knotfest is happening here in Des Moines. So I haven't seen anything on any kind of restrictions. Of course, it's Iowa, so I would doubt it. I was actually lucky enough to hang out with Mick from Slipknot way back in the InfoWars days. I contacted him through MySpace. We were friends on MySpace. And, I'd love to go to that. I think I actually might be in Florida for a wedding, or it might be at the same time as my Virginia wedding. I'm not sure. But if not, I'm definitely going to be there. And again, it just shows you all this stuff is arbitrary. You're telling me that it wasn't safe when the UFC just had full capacity over in Texas? Of course it was safe. Again, I've been to so many events now, Steve. One with you, or two with you, right? You were there December and January, right?
Yeah.
Where we were literally around tens of thousands of people, half the day at least. You know what I'm saying? We're like random everywhere. And then we went inside and we weren't wearing masks and we were around strangers. Again, the play acting, the virtual signaling, it is only enabling the fear, and the fear that is leading us into this very dangerous fourth industrial revolution. And, one of the things on this document I want to talk about just really quick is the co-opted insects. And I brought this up on Convo Couch the other day. So the co-opted insects that they talk about in this document are actually a lot of different things. Notice smart test and nanotags are here, right? Now, we've talked about remote control bugs. DARPA talking about moths that at the larval stage, they put in computer equipment that they can remotely control them and have them go wherever they want. Again, that is actually an extension of MK Ultra and Delgado's work with bulls and other mammalia and different brain electrodes that they would use. Well, it's actually worse than that. So this is a story out of 2018, and this is one of those things that I think people have to understand. When we're talking about GMO insects, when we're talking about nanotech, when we're talking about biological warfare, the U.S. military was already hacking insects openly with virus DNA, raising fears of dangerous new bioweapons out of DARPA research via these carriers that were genetically modified to attack populaces and distribute man-made viruses. That's scary, and that's real, and that's completely unaccountable, Steve. And that's why this whole narrative right now of the lab in Wuhan and a leak is total bullshit. Let me say it again, folks. It's total bullshit. The upper echelons of our intelligence community, be it the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, abso-fucking-lutely 100% know what this virus is, where it came from, and how it was dispersed throughout the global populace, period. If you are telling yourself anything else, if you think some crack team of politicians or government investigators are going to get to the bottom of it, you are fucking kidding yourself, and you live in fucking cartoon world. You might as well take 8 fucking antidepressants and shove Ingreza up your ass. That's what you might as well do now if you believe that narrative, because that is not a correct narrative. That is the narrative they are now selling you in a limited hangout attempt to further control how people feel, because if they understand what was truly going on, they would be full board against this very real fourth industrial revolution, this new world order, where there is no place for real journalism, and apparently fighter jets take down commercial airliners and arrest journalists in Belarus.
Let's talk about that for a minute, because we did a pretty thorough deep dive on that last night on the show. We were live on the air on Sunday when it shout out to Franklin Walbrown from Roar Media. sent it in a DM on Twitter. Hey, they just grounded a plane. They yanked a journalist off. What the fuck? We were like, well, this has shades of what happened when Evo Morales' plane got grounded because the U.S. thought that Ed Snowden was on it, but because Julian Assange, again, risked his fucking life to organize the misdirect and the bailout, Sarah Harrison, Ed Snowden was not on that plane. So we discussed it, and then life happened. We knew we were going to be on camera for a couple of days. Gave us some time to look into it. When we started to look into it, what we found was that for the first time in a while, Jason, the entire Western establishment gave a fuck about a targeted journalist. We were like, fuck, man. Well, who is this guy? So I'm sure here we go.
Because I've had some people say
you're familiar with Moon of Alabama, right?
No.
The blog?
No.
Moon of Alabama has been around for fucking ever, man. They are good.
Okay.
Like when you're doing when you go through the news in the morning, and you're going through the sites that you usually go through to just see whatever you can grab for the show for the day or what. Moon of Alabama, make it a stop, because they had this article. Let's see where. Come on, let me open the damn thing. They had this article up yesterday about this individual. Roman Protasevich, the guy who was arrested in Belarus, turns out Western-backed neo-Nazi. So for your research and the Canada Files of very well-sourced and way more complete pieces on the guy, linked a mountain of evidence in the form of social media postings, photos, videos, which support their findings. From those, we learn that Protasevich has long been a member of the fascist Young Front militia of Belarus. He even fought alongside the neo-Nazi Azov battalion in Ukraine's post-Maidan civil war. That's the ongoing conflict in Donbass that we've talked about a lot. We had Eva Bartlett on for it, and the photojournalist Dean O'Brien. Here's the guy on their Black Sun recruiting magazine. Let's continue a little bit. This is him here. And this is the Azov battalion. This is a neo-Nazi military brigade in the Ukraine. Another point missing from Western media is that Protasevich has long been on the payroll of various Western government finance propaganda media. So this is the journalist, this is the outlets that the journalist was working for. Radio Free Liberty, Radio Free Europe, Jason. 4 months after a week-long tour of the U.S. State Department in 2018, Protasevich began working for USAID-funded Belarus Euro Radio, left his job there, and went to editor-in-chief of Nexta, foreign-funded Telegram messaging channel covering Belarusian news located in Poland. Let's see. Nexta worked for Belsat, funded by the Polish Foreign Ministry since 2007, before engaging closely with Nexta. And Nexta played a key role in organizing pro-coup demonstrations in Belarus to protect Western-supported candidate Svetlana, long-ass name, who only won 11% of the vote, yet falsely claims that the election was rigged in Lukashenko's favor, along with regime change organization NED's funded activists in Belarus. That woman is basically like the Juan Guaido of Belarus. We just sort of we're just finding out about her yesterday, but like Boris Johnson has a tweet out saying that Boris Johnson in the tweet claims he's a journalist, Jason. He says, as a journalist and a champion of free speech or something to that effect.
So this is almost like a Khashoggi deal where he's obviously got intelligence connections and isn't really just a journalist. He's definitely working for intelligence agencies, and that's what's being obfuscated. Because I had somebody else tell me basically the same thing. It does seem odd that they would go to the extent they did instead of just holding him at customs or having some of their agents there waiting for him once the plane landed to take him down, which makes me ask myself what else is going on in this story. Was there some kind of an immediate threat that they felt like they needed to get him in that manner?
Well, and I mean, I believe at this point his girlfriend is still walking around. She hasn't been brought into it yet. Like, there's an article in Business Insider on the girlfriend where she's got like branding and shit. I mean, it's this has been going on for a while, apparently. So you're right, and that's a good conclusion or at least a good fucking follow up right there. Is what like, to what extent is this guy involved in an intelligence capacity? Because they did ground the plane.
Yeah,
they called in a fake fucking bomb threat for it.
Yeah.
You know, they checked out each and every passenger. They ran the dogs around all the luggage, all of that shit. Like, they went to town on this, made a big scene. And if he's just running a Telegram channel, that seems a bit severe.
It does. It does. Yeah. We are in severe times, and obviously precedents have been set, but I definitely... It's something I'm definitely going to be looking into. It's funny because I was searching the term New World Order the other day, and an article with that term and that subject matter had come up. And again, I think it might have been even Ryan Christian when I had him on earlier in the week had discussed the fact that this guy seemed to be funded elsewhere and wasn't a true journalist. Steve, we're coming up on an hour. I got to cut loose shortly. Is there anything else you want to go over really quick?
While we're here, I did want to talk a little bit about the Zorro Ranch because it's about to come up for sale. And you and Whitney brought it up this morning. It's something that like doesn't get discussed often enough. One of our favorite supporters of the show, who's a mod over on the YouTube, Shadow Band Refugee. He's in New Mexico, and like we talked about it a little bit on the call-in show, but this place has still never once been looked at by the FBI. It's referred to as the baby making factory.
Yeah. So let's talk just about the property for a second in New Mexico. Recently, I did a story where you had somebody who filed a false claim that they had bought the entire property for like $100 or $200. And apparently this person who was filing this paperwork had run other similar scams and actually got them notarized. That was definitely a possibility that was happening there. However, the land surveyors have not had the cooperation of whoever the neighbor is there. Also, so there's another property owner, because this is such a sprawling property, that won't let that area be surveyed either. Now, one of the big discussions that we should have about Zorro Ranch in New Mexico is how much it was obviously protected by the likes of Bill Richardson, who was the governor at the time, and openly documentation shows he's been accused of being one of the pedophiles in this organization. He's never been questioned about it. I think the media has maybe asked him once. And really, the thing that me and Whitney went over was, this kind of startling claim that if you type in, Epstein baby factory or Epstein clone factory, you go and it goes to what was happening in New Mexico and in Zorro Ranch. And not only do you have this sprawling property that has its own little nook for the Clintons and I'm sure other people of power, but you have to ask yourself, because of that location, because of that seclusion, because of being in the desert, are there bodies buried? Where are the bodies buried? Is there the possibility that just like in the New York mansion, where everything was fitted with a camera and there was a secret room where people were physically watching and recording at the same time, could this be something much bigger? In other words, could there be an underground base on this thing? And I'm not talking, the size of like Roswell or Area 51, but it's certainly not out of the realm of possibility. When you especially look at St. James Island, right? And what appeared to be that there were these tunnels that had been filled in. There were underground facilities there as well. So,
it had its own landing strip.
Yeah.
Zorro Ranch.
Yeah.
And this is what Shadow Band Refugee pointed out when he called in, is that the airport's like 40 minutes away. It's not that far. There's no reason you would need a private airstrip unless you were doing shit you really didn't want anybody else to see. Like, and it had a helipad. I mean, but it's true. I think it was out of Australia. I'll pull that up real quick. I mean, even in their headline, it's the baby making ranch.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's the thing. And you know, they say, like, was this Epstein trying to clone himself or create an army of Epsteins? I think that's very, very suspicious. And seeing with this story, we've only gotten, you know, a hint of a glimpse of what was really going on. And we know this guy was donating to all sorts of technology firms, that he was obviously into, you know, biological companies as well, what we would call genetics and eugenics. It is not beyond the pale that some of these women, that after they were being used in the sex trade, that maybe fell off or were used up, they wanted to use as surrogates for genetic experimentations.
100%. We don't get into the transhumanist side of Epstein and that sort of, you know, mad scientist realm of Epstein often enough, because obviously the focus is on the most horrific aspect on its face, which is the child rape trafficking. But this is someone who had godlike narcissism, who was convinced that, like, not his genetic, not like his bloodline, but him personally.
That's how they portray it. I'm skeptical, but then again, you never know, right? I mean, Maria Farmer, for instance, says that, you know, in some of his conversations with her conversations with him, you know, he said things like, I don't need any of this. You know, I grew up in the streets in Brooklyn, and this is nothing. I could lose all this tomorrow. I don't need these comforts, blah, blah, blah. And then there are others that talk about his narcissism. And obviously a man who expected to be sexually pleasured by different people 3 times a day, and then was able to even create this situation that after being convicted of pedophilia and most of it being covered up, he was still able to leave jail and meet some of these underage girls again while it was all going on. And still that hasn't come under enough scrutiny. And more importantly, he's a man who was able to not kill himself twice. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
3 times a day at his age, like, that's got to be some mediocre dick, dude. Like, the chick's doing all of the work. 100%.
Well, I don't even like to get into the morbid aspects, because we know, you know, how that these were in large part underage girls and victims of sexual abuse, and probably much more. But yeah, the whole thing is crazy. The Zorro Ranch situation absolutely accentuates that. And, you know, I would encourage people to continue to shine a light on that very, very dark story, because we're not getting a Ghislaine Maxwell trial this summer. We may not get one next summer. And the cover-up crew has been working hard ever since they brought him in via that New York indictment.
Oh, 100%. Jason, you got shit to do. I've got Anonymous Bites back in like 2 hours. Yeah. Please let everyone know how they can support you, where they can find you. Thank you, as always, for stopping by.
Well, a pleasure as always, Steve. And obviously, let's Rockfin. Rockfin's the place to be, guys. I want to thank them for allowing me to continue to do this, because without that platform, there would not be a way financially that I would be able to do this multiple times a day, research the things I do, speak as freely as I am, because I'd be trying to make a living, you know, and obviously YouTube doesn't want me to make that living. Rockfin seems to be encouraging it. You know, I can't thank them enough, Steve. You know, they've allowed me to even open up my audience further. Sure, I'm bringing in my YouTube audience, but so many people on that platform that may have not have heard of this information, that were just into collegiate wrestling or MMA or, comedy. Maybe they, not to throw shade on Sam Tripoli, but maybe they came in at like one of those wacky Sam Tripoli cryptozoologist like pods that he has, right? Which, I'm not saying are bad, but then all of a sudden they catch Jason Burmis on that pod, right? And then it's something more serious. So,
God bless Sam Tripoli.
Oh, absolutely.
For real. And fucking, he still to this day has said the funniest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life, and that is that Barbara Bush's vagina is basically a portal for lizard people.
Exactly. Like I said, man, you got to be able to have fun with it.
I got through that shit without laughing.
Yeah. And I just saw, Chrissy Mayer is now on the Rockfin as well. I've done her podcast a couple times. She's very fun. It's just an honor and a blessing to be part of it, and I would encourage people to hop on the train, get that free account, jump on an iOS or Android app. The Android app's pretty damn good. Can't wait till they get it to the point where we can broadcast from the app, and you guys can tip on it.
But it's over.
But it's a great mobile way to do it, and I would just encourage people to share my information, not take anything I say word for word or verbatim or without doing your own research. That's what I want you to do. And then, quite frankly, I want you to be more like Steve and take action and get out there and realize you got to be your own hero. There's going to be a ton of losses, but we're losing every day by not fighting back. And if my story from earlier with those two mothers isn't encouraging you, I don't know what will, because it sure as hell encourages me to keep going on strong.